welcome to another War Thunder video, and we're going to do the Brits today, as you can tell, and, well, this is where we're going to get our first two exceptions for the belts, and the first two exceptions are going to be the Mark 17 Mosquito and the Tempest Mark 5 Vickers P. And the reason for that is because the only shells that these planes will ever fire are AP, with the exception of the Mosquito's 30 caliber machine guns, obviously. So the only belts that these have are just AP only, unfortunately. But for planes that don't just have only AP, well, you got the Mark IV Hurricane here with its 40mm cannons. And we're going to start off with the machine gun belts, and you get these belts on any British 30 caliber machine gun that isn't a Nimrod or a Fury, or I think the Wirraway actually. I think the reserves and the Wirraway are the only planes that actually get these belts. Just off the top of my head, yeah, no, that's it. Even the Gladiators get them. So, for the default belt, we got Tracer, AP, API, Ball, and Incendiary. As far as effectiveness goes, these are about as horrible as the American 30 cals, if not exactly the same. The universal belt, well, the only difference is you just take out the omnipurpose ball bullet and replace it with an API bullet. The tracer bullets, or the tracer belts, are Incendiary Tracer, API, Incendiary Tracer, API. Once again, pretty useless. I mean, I've heard a lot of people say that they're extraordinarily effective. I probably should use them, but I have had way too many experiences of saying, alright, you know what, screw it, I'll give it a try, and then being absolutely disgusted by the result. So I'm just going to stick with the stealth for now, and that is 2 API and an Incendiary. And as far as I'm concerned, these are the best belts that any British machine gun, any British 30 caliber machine gun will ever get. These are... They're not great, not by any stretch of the imagination, but the lack of performance in these things is more just down to the fact that they're 30 cals and not 50s. If these belts were in the American 50 cals at Tier 1, people would be throwing massive hissy fits all over the forums. So yeah, these are the best belts that you'll get access to for the British 30 cals, and as far as I'm concerned, they're the only things you really should use. Use the tracers if you want to, or if you're not exactly sure where to aim, but as soon as you get used to these things, just use stealth. You'll be so much happier. Next, we'll do the 40mm, and well, we got the default belt, which is AP, HE, AP, HE, and then we got Armor Target, which is all AP, and Air Target, which is all HE. Pretty straightforward. Next, we're going to do the early tier machine gun. This is the Vickers E machine gun. Unfortunately, it is effectively a carbon copy of the KI-10. The KI-10's machine guns. The Vickers E machine gun and the Type 89 machine gun, which is the Tier 1 Japanese machine gun, 30 cal machine gun, they're almost identical, and I think they are in fact identical, both in damage and in belts. The default belts are Tracer, AI, Ball, AP, API. They are even more useless than the American 30 cal bullets. The American 30 cal belts default anyway, and it's kind of amazing that I'm saying that. The uni belts are Tracer, AP, AI, AP. Don't even bother with these, they're horrible. The Tracer belts are 3 Tracer and an AP, and well, if this was horrible, I don't even need to say anything about this. And then the Stealth belt is Incendiary, 3 AP, and an AI. And honestly, these are the best belts that you got, and these are absolutely horrible. That's the Vickers E machine gun. Get out of it as soon as humanly possible. Don't fly tier 1 Japs. Moral of the story, don't fly tier 1. Or at least don't fly tier 1 Brits. And don't fly tier 1 Japs. Next, I'm actually going to take a little bit of a detour here. And I'm going to go ahead and, even though I said I'm not going to go over cross-nation guns, I am actually going to break that here. And I'm going to do it again when we get to Germany. And the reason for that is because, well, pretty much everybody gets access to the 20mm cannon that the D520 gets. And not only that, but the French really only get 2... they only have 3 20mm cannons out of their entire roster. They have the Hispano Mark II, the Hispano Mark V, and the Hispano Mark I, aka the Hispano 404. This is the same cannon that you have seen in the P400, and it is also the same cannon that is in the Mark VI Beaufighter. And by the way, something that will probably just relieve a little bit of confusion for some people, the Mark II Hispano is exactly the same as the ANM2, and the Mark V Hispano is exactly the same as the ANM3. The only difference is the belt composition, and I will admit that is a pretty big difference when you compare them. But we'll get to the Hispanos when we actually do come to them. For start, we'll start out with the French machine guns, these 7.5mm Mac 1934s. And the reason why I'm going to go ahead and do this now is because, well, like I said, the only machine guns that the French get access to that are their own are these machine guns. These 7.5s are the only machine guns unique to the French. And they're and as you can tell, they're not exclusively unique to the French. The D520 gets them, and if you've ever seen a D521, or if you have a D521, you lucky bastard, it has the same machine guns as all of the other French planes. Not only that, but the same 20mm. The French, even into Tier 4, will only ever get that one 20mm, or that Hispano 404. Even the VB-10s at 4.0 and 3.7 respectively, never fly them. They're that low BR for a reason. Even they have this gun, and that's at Tier 4. So, just go ahead and scratch this one off the list now. So, for the 7.5s, you got, well, a couple of different belt options. You got the default belt, which is a Tracer, 3-ball ammo, an AI, or an Incendiary, and an AP. Pretty useless belts, but, you know, it's, yeah, pretty useless. The universal belts are a Tracer, 2 AP, and 2 Incendiary. Not great. Yeah, pretty crap. Although, actually, I think these are the same belts as the British 30s used to get, because the Tracers are all Incendiary Tracers. As far as effectiveness goes with these things, I really have no idea, and I have no interest in finding out. for the stealth belts, we got 2 AP and an incendiary. These are probably the best belts that you'll get access to. For the French, are probably the best belts for the French 7.5s. If you don't want to use these, I'd say Uni. Maybe Tracers, although I'm not entirely confident in that. And then we got the 20mm, which for the default, we got 2 high explosive, and a practice round, and a tracer bullet. Or a tracer round. And then the Uni, the only difference is you get HE, HEF SAPI. And what that mouthful of a designation means is high explosive, fragmentation, semi-armor piercing, incendiary. Repeat that 3 times and get yourself a Nobel Prize. So, the Uni, you get 2 AP, or 2 HE, an AP, and a tracer round. And these are still pretty awful belts, if I'm going to be entirely honest. Then you get your armored target your ground target belt, which is 3 AP, an HE, and a tracer. Once again, pretty useless belts. And then for the tracers, you get AP, tracer, and HE, and these are some of the worst 20mm belts I think I have ever seen. As far as the last one, which is the stealth, you get 3 AP, or 3 HE, I mean, and 1 AP. And these are actually probably the best belts you'll get access to, although I would recommend in simulator and in realistic that you use Uni. Just because the tracer, really, that's it. That's really the only good thing about that. And in arcade, just use stealth. That's really in arcade, use stealth, just as a general rule. It's probably the best belt that you'll get access to. Next, we're going to go over and have a look at the British 50 cal belts. And the British actually are kind of unique in this, and that is that, and I'll go ahead and look at the 20mm. Actually, the only difference between the Mark II and Mark V 20mm belts, or rather the Mark II/Mark V and the Hispano 404 or Hispano Mark I belts, the only difference between them is that they have this air targets belt, which is all HE. No tracers, just all HE. And it's a pretty good belt, although it will very, very often let you down. And really that's just kind of characteristic of Hispanos in general. Whenever you don't want Hispanos to let you down, they'll let you down. Whenever whenever you need a snapshot to kill somebody, Hispanos will just fail you as a general rule. And as far as the 50 cal belts, these are unique to the British. The British are the only people to get this belt composition. And what we get is for the default, we get a tracer, 2 ball, an IAI, and an API. For the Uni, we get 3 API, a tracer, and an IAI. For the ground targets, we get pretty much carbon copy of the American ones. The tracers are exactly the same. The tracer belt is exactly the same as the one in the A36. The ground targets is a tracer, 2 AP, 2 API, and an IAI. And the stealth is 3 API and 2 IAI. As far as which ones to use, stealth or Uni, maybe ground targets, whatever you fancy, but generally I'd say stealth and Uni. Stealth or Uni. And I believe that brings, well, we got the hunter. Yeah, whatever, why not? We'll look at the hunter. The belts for the hunter, or rather the 30mm Aiden, which by the way is another gun that the French get access to. The default belts are APHEI, APHE, APHE. Air targets are all HE, pretty much. Ground targets are APHE, and stealth is APHE, APHE. And probably air targets is the best belt for this. Alright, well that wraps up the British, pretty much. Yeah, they don't have a lot of different guns to choose from. So, next we will start with the Axis. And we'll probably start with Japan and finish off with the Germans, because the Germans are probably the most complicated out of everybody. So, I'll meet you in Japan.